Good day, everyone. Welcome to our class online lecture. For this time, our topic would be on forgery and falsification. These are crimes that are being enumerated in the revised penal code of the Philippines, and this is relative to our course, which is nationalism and patriotism, because these are acts that goes against the established nationalistic and patriotic character of a citizen. Okay, so let's go to our first topic. So what is what we call as forgery? So forgery is simply an act of giving a document the appearance of genuinity or genuine appearance or real appearance. But first, we have to determine what is a document. So, plus a document is something, okay, that contains a statement declaring an obligation or omitting that obligation. So, if a statement written in a piece of paper does not give you a responsibility nor take away that responsibility, or it does not give you an obligation, a right, or does not omit your right or obligation, then such is not considered document under this particular law. Now, what is then forgery? Forgery is giving that document the appearance that it is genuine or that it is real. Okay? So what are the acts now constituting the crime of forgery? The revised penal code of the Philippines, particularly Article 161, gives out the scope of the crimes of forgery. Okay? Crimes of forgery includes first, forging the seal of the government, counterfeiting the coins of the Republic of the Philippines, mutilation of coins of the Philippines, forging treasury or bank notes or other payable to bearer, and falsification of documents under Article 170 to 174 of the same law. Okay, so all of these acts from 161 to 174 are considered as crime of forgery. Okay, now in Article 161, there are only three aspects that is being defined by law in that particular article to be committed as an act of forgery. First, forgery is being committed against the Great Seal of the Republic of the Philippines. Okay? Next, forgery is being committed against the signature of the Chief Executive or President of the Republic of the Philippines. And lastly, forging the national stamp. Well, if you talk about signature and stamp in Article 161, you are talking about signature of the President of the Philippines and the stamp of the Philippines itself. It doesn't talk about the signature of a private person aside from the President. Okay? So, very clear ang 161, okay, na nagsasabi class that forgery is being committed against the signature of the the Chief Executive of the Republic of the Philippines. So tatlo lang ang coverage ng acts of forgery in Article 161. That is, okay, the national seal. The national seal is the round shape, okay, having the inscriptions Republika ng Pilipinas, Makadiyos, Makatao, Makakalikasan, Makabansa, which is the motto, national motto of the Philippines. And of course, at the center, the inner center or the inner circle contains what we call the coat of arms. So that if a document bears only the coat of arms without the circling figure with the inscriptions that I have mentioned, then such document is not genuine, because the Great Seal of the Philippines is in a round shape with the national coat of arms inside the inner circle, surrounded by the inscription Republika ng Pilipinas together with the national motto of the Philippines. So that's the first one. When you forge the Great Seal, okay, that is covered under 161, the signature of the Chief Executive of the Philippines. Okay, at this moment, okay, we have President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, and this is one of the samples of the signature of the president. So that if you committed an act, okay, diminishing or imitating the signature of the president, then you are committing not falsification of public document, but specifically under Article 161, an act of forgery. Okay? And then lastly, the third one that is being covered under Article 161 is what we call forging the national stamp. Well, in this figure class, or in this picture, you can see the different kinds of the national stamp of the Philippines. I prefer to present to you this one because it gives you an idea how the national stamp of the Philippines innovated, okay, from olden times up to the present time. So you can still see a figure which says 6 centavos, 5 centavos, and 20 centavos at the lower portion of the national stamp. Okay. I wasn't able to find or determine which one is the most recent national stamp, because I should have given to you that as your assignment. So you have to search which national stamp is being used at the current year. Okay, so this is Article 161. So any acts, okay, committing or committed, I should say, any acts committed in violation of Article 161 is an act of forgery. Okay, now, so making an imitation of the signature of the chief executive of the president. That's number one, or number two rather. Okay, so there are interesting cases which you could discuss on this matter. When you make or when you imitate the signature of the chief executive of the republic, then you are committing what you call forgery. But there are two instances for you to determine whether the act constitutes forgery or falsification. Okay? If it falls under 161, then it is an act of forgery. If it falls in Article 170 to 174, then that is an act of falsification. But remind you, whether it is an act of forgery or an act of falsification, both are categorized under the revised penal code as crimes of forgery. Okay, so the crime is forgery, whether you falsify the document or you forge the document. Okay? Because falsification is a crime of forgery. under Chapter 4 of the Revised Penal Code. Okay? So, ibig sabihin yan, class, kahit finalsify mo yung document, okay, under 170 or 174, the act is falsification, but what you committed is a crime of forgery. Meaning to say, falsification is a process of forging a document. Okay? Because when you falsify, your intention is that you are going to imitate the signature of the president in order to make the document where you put that particular signature to appear as it is genuine and real. And what did we say? How did we define forgery a while ago? Forgery is an act of giving a document the appearance that it is genuine or real. Okay? So, meaning to say, yung sinabi ko kanina, class, falsification, an act of falsifying a document, is a process of committing the crime of forgery. Okay. Now, there are two cases, as I have said a while ago. We have, first case, what if a written executive order of the president, okay, was left without his signature? Okay, so let's have an example of this. So there is what we call this. There is a written document without without the. Okay, so this is an example of the number one case wherein the chief executive's signature was being forged. Okay. First case, a written executive order of the president without his signature. So it's like this. This is an example only. So sabihin natin this is a certificate kasi nakalagay. But what if this is an executive order? So let's try to remove this and change it with an executive order. Let's say number 1. Okay, number 1. So what year was it? What was it being promulgated? Series of let's say 2021. So pinakabago siyang executive order. Okay, so it's an executive order number 1, series of 2021. So sabihin na natin ito kunwari yung nakalagay na sa document. But the problem is the document has no signature of the president. Let's say nagmamadali yung presidente, hindi niya napirmahan ngayon yung document. So the presidential secretary, okay, because the executive order was so urgent and the president was not here or is absent or failed to put his signature, the presidential secretary now copied. He copied the signature of the president and put it in the document, in the executive order. So, naging ganyan yung executive order ngayon. So, the previously unsigned document is now appeared to have been signed by the president. Ito yung first case. So, the problem now is, will this fall in Article 161 or will it fall in Article 170? 161 refers to the acts of forgery exclusive to the 3 acts which we mentioned. Okay, forgery against the Great Seal, forgery against the signature, and forgery against this national stamp. Or in Article 171, that's falsification of public document. Okay, falsification by imitating the president's signature. So which is which? What act is being committed? Remember, class, the question is not what crime is being committed. Okay? Because if you are talking about what crime is being committed, then automatically your answer would be forgery. Because all of the crimes or all of the acts from Article 161 to 174 of the Revised Penal Code are labeled again as what we call acts or crimes of forgery. Automatic yon. Kapag ang tanong, what crime is being committed? Forgery. But if the question would be, what acts is being committed? It could be forgery, an act of forgery, or an act of falsification. Now, the first case, this one, as we have mentioned a while ago, the first situation, there is a document unsigned, but here comes the presidential secretary copying the signature and putting it on the document to make it appear that the document was signed and issued by the president himself. Question, what is the act being committed? Is it the act of falsification or an act of forgery? That's the first situation. Now, second situation, what is the second situation, class? It is being mentioned. There is a blank paper with the authentic signature of the president. Eto. So the president signed a document, a blank paper, and left it on his table. Here comes the presidential secretary. Nakita niya yung bakanting papel, walang nakasulat doon pero may pirma si presidente. So the signature of the president here is authentic. But the document has no written statement. So what did the presidential secretary do was to write something in the paper, okay, above the signature. So since bakante ito, ang ginawa niya, naglagay siya ngayon ng statement sa taas. Here is the statement now. So the paper now becomes like this. Okay, so it already has the genuine signature of the president and the encoded statement. So, is the act an act of falsification or the act is an act of forgery? Okay, class, this one, since there's no such thing, okay, to forge, remember that when you forge a document, you have to make it appear that it is a genuine and real document. Okay, and one way of forging is falsifying the document. If you are to be asked what crime is being committed here, automatic the crime is forgery under Article 161. Okay, because when you write something above the genuine signature of the president, then you are making it appear that the document is real to the public. So crime, forgery. But the act, is the act an act of forgery, an act of forging a document, or an act of falsifying a public document? Okay? In order for you to understand or to define whether such is an act of falsification or forgery, you must have to understand how is falsification being committed. Okay? So, how is falsification being committed? Here. Forging versus falsifying. Forgery is giving a document an appearance of a true and genuine document, while falsification is committed by erasing, substituting, counterfeiting, or altering or changing by any means the letters, figures, words, or signs in that document. Okay? So that is how you falsify the document. You erase, you substitute, you counterfeit, you change or alter anything that is in the document. That's falsification. While forgery, you just give the document an appearance of true and genuine document. Okay, so let's go back. Here, what act is being committed? Forgery or falsification? In this case, class, the act being committed is falsification. Okay? That's an act of falsification. Here, what is being committed is an act of forgery. You forge the signature of the president because this document originally has no signature and you imitate the signature of the president. So that's an act of forgery. And here, since there is a genuine signature, okay, forgery can no longer be committed, but falsification. Okay? You falsified because you put something, you alter the whole document by entering statements above the genuine signature. Well, in fact, and this is falsification of public document because the statements are unverified, but since you forged or copied, imitated, okay? Kita nyo yung ano natin kanina? How is falsification being committed? Altering, okay? Erasing or substituting or imitating, pangongopya. Okay? You substitute, okay? Palitan mo, alter, change it. Counterfeiting kasi class, you talk about already the counterfeited coins of the Republic of the Philippines. You erase or you erase, that's the antonym already of alteration because when you alter, it's the same thing as you put something on the document. So by that, you imitated, you did something to make this appear as a genuine document by putting the signature of the president, written by your own hands, not by the president, then this act is what we call forgery. Here, this is falsification.